We are always focused on our own challenges, and as real estate investors, there's always a challenge. Whether it's a lead manager who quit unexpectedly or an acquisitions manager who doesn't like the commission we pay anymore and is going to do it on his own and become our competitor. Well, there's one challenge that many of us haven't had to face. That's forming a business from outside the US and operating it in a totally different country. Colin Murphy has been flipping land in the US from Spain for over a decade, and we did an episode on this recently where somebody was flipping land from Ireland, and it was a huge hit because there's a lot of people who want to know, how do they form a business from outside the US to operate here? How can they invest in properties here? How can they wholesale here? So not only will Colin inspire you, but he's actually faced more challenges and taught us more about flipping land than I ever expected. In other words, one thing he showed me was people under the age of 75, they don't even sell him land at all. It's always the older generation. So he's able to filter the age of the homeowners. So stick around for that and more, and be inspired because he's doing it from Spain. How has your business evolved? What do you do mostly now?
So I'm a recovered house flipper. I used to do a lot of those, and I've been doing mostly land for the last 3-4 years.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So I pivoted. So when I was living here for 4 or 5 years to scale the land business with some other business partners, and we split up during COVID, and I had about a year before I was moving back to Spain. So I was looking at something that I could kind of control and scale to my own pace, and land kind of fit the bill. There's a lot less plates to spin than there is when you're renovating houses, and it's easier to manage remotely.
Ah, interesting.
As you can imagine.
Yeah. And our buddy Tim, who came on the podcast earlier, said he switched from house flipping to land as well.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So I'm glad that's working out for you. Why did you flip houses and do land from Europe in the United States?
Yeah, good question. I mean, the short answer is that Europe is a great place to live in terms of the quality of life, and the culture and the food and the climate. But America is where you want to do business. So I was trying to have my cake and eat it and get the best of both worlds. My wife is Spanish. They don't like moving too far from their moms. I did manage to drag her here for 4 or 5 years, but it was painful. But mostly, you can do it virtually now. I mean, and even. I've been doing Florida real estate for almost 20 years. A lot of that time I had 2 local business partners, so I was able to do most of the marketing and the selling and bidding on foreclosure auctions and a lot of that kind of stuff. And they were here doing project management and signing paperwork and contracts. So that worked out well. And then kind of post-COVID, it became a lot easier to do it remotely with remote online notarization, giving attorneys power of attorney. I had all my bank accounts and business accounts set up, so that was pretty easy. And it just became easy. It was just happened pretty naturally. I mean, I've had these different pivots every 4 or 5 years where I switched to something different, but always in real estate. And it's mostly been in Florida real estate, but I've done real estate in a lot of countries, when I was younger.
Wow. So you said your wife is Spanish, but does that mean you're not Spanish?
I'm not Spanish. I'm Irish.
You're Irish. Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Okay, perfect.
The complexion is a giveaway.
Gotcha. I've only been to Europe once, so I didn't straighten everything out.
Yeah, I'm Colin Murphy. So Murphy's a good Irish name.
That makes sense.
So I'm like 45 now. I left Ireland when I was 22, so I've been gone longer than I lived there. So my accent's quite mellowed out, like a mid-Atlantic accent now. But living in Spain for 15 of the last 20 years, 5 years here, and then I lived in London for a few years as well. So yeah, I've been around the block, but I'm originally born and grew up in Ireland.
How did you know and think that real estate in the United States was the best business for you? I mean, there's so many things. I know you said it's a good place to live in Europe, business friendly here in the US, but I mean, certainly there were other things you were considering too, right?
Yeah, I mean, way back when you were probably in middle school, I had a business in Dublin where we were promoting real estate in emerging markets, so like Central, South America, Eastern Europe, and it was going very well. We were selling those properties to like English and British people, so Irish and British people. And then the crisis hit, the 2008 crisis. And so that business model of selling pre-construction kind of lifestyle properties in emerging markets just completely ground to a halt. Like it went from doing great to doing terribly in like 2 quarters. And so our business model literally just was bleeding cash. We had to let most of the people in the office go, and we had to find out, well, what are we going to do to pay the mortgage? And my business partner at the time, David, he'd bought and sold, I think, a condo in Kissimmee, south of Orlando. And he said, well, I heard prices in Orlando are falling because the real estate crisis happened 2 years earlier here than it did in Europe. So we just kind of pivoted to doing that emerging market stuff, to selling Florida condos. Because a lot of people at the time, a lot of builders were buying apartment communities, converting them into condos, selling them individually and making a fortune. Like they buy some apartments for 4 million, spend $500,000 fixing them up, sell them individually for 7 million. A lot of people made a fortune, but there was a lot of those guys were holding those apartment communities in the run up to 2007 and 8 and 9, and condo financing disappeared completely. So the business model evaporated. So we sold a lot of tenanted condos to British and Irish buyers, and that was our foothold in the Florida market. And we did that successfully, just almost being like an international marketing agent for all these properties. And we sold hundreds and hundreds of them to British and Irish people, and then slowly established a footprint here. My business partners moved here. I think in 2010, we started selling to Americans. And then around 2013, 2014, we pivoted from selling other people's stuff to just buying and selling our own houses. And we slowly transitioned to becoming house flippers mostly in the Tampa Bay area, and selling them to out-of-state American investors who wanted to build small rental portfolios. So did that for like 6-7 years, and in our busiest year we did I think 100 flips in 2019. So we scaled
100 flips.
100 flips.
Holy cow! And that's a lot of plates spinning, right? A lot of money outlaid, a lot of contractors to coordinate.
Yep,
that is a big operation.
Yeah, I had to buy like 2 properties a week. I was bidding on a lot of auctions, underwriting a lot of deals. So I was in charge of like buying enough to feed the beast, because we had just insatiable demand from a lot of Californians that were, equity rich and had a lot of cash to buy these $130,000 rentals in Florida, which are now $300,000. But this is, 10 years ago.
Well, you sold them a great deal.
Great deal. We were buying stuff for 70, 80 grand, putting in 25 grand, selling them for like a 20% markup. And they got great rentals, and the people that held onto them are doing great. So scaled that up. And you're right, you're managing multiple crews. You're doing a lot of dispo. You have a lot of headaches with inspections, appraisals, needy investors, property managers, and obviously you need to raise a lot of money to fund all that as well. And but that's why I moved over here to scale that business up. I moved here from Spain because it was going from 10 to 20 to 30 flips. My business partner was pulling his hair out. It went grey, started falling out. I said, Colin, you got to come over and help me. So I did help him when we put some systems and processes in place, and we scaled it from like 30 to 50 to 70 to 90, over like a 4-year period, and made some good money. And then COVID hit, and we split up and did our own thing. And I kind of pivoted slowly to land after that, but pretty deep background in single family flips.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got to have everything dialed in to be doing 100 in 1 year. That's really incredible. Mm-hmm. So one of the plates you have to spin less in land flipping is you don't have to raise money, right?
You don't have to. I mean, I like to do bigger. Well, comparatively speaking, I mean, you don't need to raise money if you're buying a lot for 10,000 and selling it for 20, which is how I kind of started out. Okay. Testing the market, doing those smaller deals. But if you're buying lots for 100 or 200 and selling for 300 or 400, then if you have a handful of those, you do kind of run out of cash. It's nowhere near as capital intensive as houses. So if you're we had generally like 15 to 20 houses in our pipeline at any one time, which is a couple of $1 million. Whereas with land, what I do now is I raise private money, a lot of from my old buddies who did the single family. So I raise private financing for the larger 6-figure land flips, but for the smaller 5-figure flips, I have a line of credit, a business line of credit from Chase Bank, like $250,000, which funds all those ones. So I try to borrow money for everything. I don't like to use operational cash to fund the flips. I try and keep a lean business that way. And I don't want to get it's very easy to do well, but then the next quarter you're stuck with a lot of inventory and you don't have money to buy new deals. So I try and get beyond that by having finance for whatever I want to get.
Got it. Okay, cool. So you do raise money, but you're not buying as big of assets typically, and you can make a pretty good spread. You said buy it for 10 and sell it for 20. I mean, that's a pretty good good difference.
I mean, the good deals you get at 50 cents on the dollar. And you asked me about spinning plates. I mean, with land, for the majority of land deals, I'm not adding any value. Obviously, with houses, you're renovating kitchens, roofs, bathrooms, paint, you've permits, you've landscaping, you've all sorts of stuff going on. With land, what I tend to do is just, get some nice photos, get clarity on the zoning, get clarity on the utility connections, get clarity on what types of properties you can build there. And then just write a great listing description and list it on a bunch of websites and wait for realtors to send you an offer buy for 50, 60 cents on the dollar and sell it for 95 cents on the dollar. And again, you're not using a ton of money. You might buy it for 60 and sell it for 100 or something like that. And they're nice deals. Whereas to make kind of 40 grand on a house, you're managing a couple of $100,000, maybe $300,000 or $400,000, and it's a lot more risk. House flipping is maybe 10 to 15% gross margins. Like you're selling a house for $400,000, you're lucky if you're making 50, 60 on it in Florida anyway. Whereas with land, if you want to make $50,000, $60,000, you often just need to outlay 60 or 70 or 80. So it's a lot easier and it's a lot less complicated. Which is not to say you can't make mistakes, but compared to house flipping, it's much simpler. Especially if you're going down the entitlement route where you're trying to get stuff rezoned or create subdivisions, that's a whole other game, and that is quite complicated.
Do you do
quite
that?
Risky. Yeah, a little bit badly, but yes, I do have a couple of those.
But most of it's just sell what you bought as is on the market.
Yeah, mostly it's do nothing. Sometimes I might clear a lot or combine it or divide it, which generally just get a survey and submit a form to like split a 5-acre lot into 2.5-acre lots. So a little bit of that, but that's just paperwork. That's not difficult. But the vast majority of my deals are like 1 to 5-acre lots. Sellers who are a little older, 65 plus, they've owned it more than 10 years, don't have any emotional attachments the way you often do.
I've heard that.
To a
It's
house.
good. Correct.
And a lot of them they generally don't live anywhere near it. They're out of state, or they're on the other side of the state, or hundreds of miles away, or have owned it for decades. So they're just keen to sell it. If they get the right type of message at the right time with the right kind of follow-up cadence, they'll do business with you, and they're happy to convert an unwanted piece of land for cash, and then someone else is very happy to buy it from you and build a beautiful home on it. So I'm acting as a kind of a trusted intermediary between those two different types of people that don't want it. You're buying it from people that see it as just a pain in the butt, and you're selling it to someone who's treasuring it and building a home for the future. So you're just acting as a kind of a trusted middleman who facilitates transactions.
And then you can find comps on land if you have access to the MLS.
Yeah.
But not all land transactions are on the MLS, right? So some of those, especially bigger pieces, might be. How do you comp those?
You're right. I mean, overall, land is a lot easier to comp than houses. Obviously, with houses, you need to look at, well, is this house got a newer roof? Has this house got a newer kitchen? Is this one built in the 70s and this one's built in the 90s? So, you need to have some skills to be able to comp houses. But if you're looking at a vacant residential land, that's just zoned for single-family homes, you can. What are 1-acre lots selling for? What are 5-acre lots selling for? I mean, you can kind of just go on Zillow and have a pretty good idea. You filter for land, you look in that area, and you'll get a bunch of recent sales and for sales. So you can get a pretty good idea of what it's worth. You're right with the bigger deals. You might need to look at more commercial sites like LoopNet or Crexy to get an idea of what they're worth. Larger lots that might be, for subdivisions or commercial properties, you need to dig a little deeper, maybe talk to some local brokers to give you some insights. But if it's a kind of a smaller, like just a regular 1 to 5-acre residential lot for putting one house on it, they're not that difficult to comp, and a lot of those do sell on the MLS. I mean, if you're looking at the really cheap stuff for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, they're off market, or they're in places like land.com and these kinds of deals, or if you're looking at recreational lots or agricultural lots, that's not really on the MLS a lot either. But I deal with pretty specific, standard residential properties. So you can get good comps on the MLS. I'm a licensed realtor in Florida, so I'm able to list my own stuff and comp my own stuff and train VAs to comp a lot of our own stuff as well. So I try and keep it, straightforward.
Got it. How do you find most of your land deals?
It's a combination of direct mail and texting.
Okay.
Targeting vacant landowners. Like I just mentioned a minute ago, I tried to get quite specific on, after I did like a couple of hundred land deals, I do a deep analysis of who's selling to me, because I'm marketing to everybody that owns, vacant land that's worth, say $20,000 to $200,000. But who's selling to me? And like young people aren't selling to me. People that owned it a short period of time aren't selling to me. People that live very nearby aren't selling it to me. So you slowly get a bit smarter as you go along, and you're like, okay, we're just targeting people that don't live in the same zip code, people that are 65 plus, that have owned it for 11 years or more, except 2004 to 2006, because people paid crazy prices during that short window, so I avoid those as well. And so I'm kind of marketing to people that have exhibited a high probability of selling at a discount. So I market to those, and the land types I like are just like vacant residential lots, 1 to 5 acres, not in a flood zone. Florida flood zones are getting very problematic nowadays. So just focusing on those guys with letters, generally, 4 or 5 letters about 7 weeks apart, slightly different text in each one, and then following up with text, send them text messages, generally within 2 to 3 weeks of the letters going out, just like, hey, We send you a letter. We'd love to talk to you. If you're interested in selling your vacant lot in Volusia County, give us a call. We'd love to help out. Blah blah blah, and that works pretty well. And that kind of system is very VA friendly in terms of them, processing doing the data scrubbing, pulling the lists from DealMachine, getting the mailer set up for Rocket Mail, coordinating the cadence of the letters, coordinating it with let's say we use launch control for the texting, so they can set up that funnel pretty quickly, and then I'm only looking at the leads really that have responded, have been qualified, that have had preliminary due diligence done on them, and I have a call scheduled on my calendar to talk to them. That obviously suits me being in a different time zone. I'm on the other side of the world in Spain, so I've got like a 2 to 3 hour window where I like talking to sellers, and I just get a handful of calls scheduled in those slots every day, and it works pretty well.
I noticed you said 55 plus is for age, right?
65 plus.
65 plus. Okay. And you find that just the older folks are typically, they're more interested in selling the land. They've probably held it for a while. Is that kind of your thought process there?
Yeah. I mean, look, the average age of the person who's sold to me is in early 70s. So like younger folks in 30s, 40s, 50s, for the most part, they're not selling.
They're going to hold it.
Or just want to hold it. They're not selling at a discount.
Yep.
For whatever reason.
I like that you reverse engineered what was working well.
Yeah.
And then you're using, in DealMachine, it says contact age. That's what you're using?
Yes.
Awesome. That's so cool you're using that.
Yeah.
That's part of our new data that we put together in the last year, where it pairs the consumer with the property data. So I'm excited that you're using
super handy.
that.
And it's very important. It's very important. I mean, sometimes you do buy from younger people, especially if they're got some sort of financial distress, like they're getting divorced, or sometimes you just have 3 siblings that inherited a lot that dad bought in the 80s, and they're in Boston and the land's in Florida and nobody's any interest, and there's squabbling over who pays the property taxes, and they just want to get rid of it, and you make it easy. Just like, look, I'll send you each a mobile notary to these 3 locations. We'll split the funds in 3. You'll get it. We'll make it super easy. That works sometimes, but for the majority of our sellers, they're just in their early 70s, and they're kind of cashing out a little bit. They're just liquidizing their assets. They don't want to leave a bunch of problems for their spouse or their kids, so they're just kind of simplifying things and getting rid of properties and converting certain types of assets into cash, and that's where we can come in and make it easy.
Does it matter to you when you're filtering if the land is owned by a LLC or if it's owned by the person individually?
No, we've done good deals with LLCs, family trusts, corporations. Obviously, we're not targeting, large owners. We're not targeting big builders or counties or HOAs or golf courses or people like that, or utility companies that are not going to sell individual lots. So you scrub those out, because Duke Energy is not going to sell you a lot, for example.
What are the filters you're using to scrub those out, or do you do it? You look through it yourself?
We're still figuring that out, because we haven't been using DealMachine that long yet. But for the most part, like I train, John Ree, who's my data manager, to kind of look for those large names, and where you have like homes, like Pulte Homes, or construction, or builders, or HOA, or golf, or county, or utility.
Yes.
So you kind of scrub, search for those words and scrub them out.
Nice. Yeah, there is the ability to have keywords in the owner name.
Okay.
In your filters, then you could like save that filter. So I don't know if they're doing it after they export, but I just wanted to let you know, in DealMachine they could actually put those keywords in the filter and save the filter. And as a saved filter. A lot of people didn't know you could do that.
I'll have to get you to email that to me. I think we've been exporting them and then doing it afterwards, and it's a little labor intensive.
Cool.
So if we can include a lot of pre-saved keywords before.
Yeah, if you've got the keywords, I'll do it for you and then show you how I did it. That way you could add more later if you wanted to.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
So are the numbers you're texting, are those also the numbers from DealMachine?
Yes.
Were you using any phone numbers before DealMachine? Were you doing it a different way?
We used to pull data from LandVision, and then we'd use direct skip to skip trace it.
Okay.
And use those numbers.
So was there a difference in the quality? I know there's a difference in the price, probably.
I mean, with you, it's bundled in, which is very handy, and LandVision is quite expensive. LandVision is a very large. There's a lot of stuff you can do with LandVision. We're only using a very small percentage of it for what we're doing. It's probably more useful if you're like a builder or a larger organization. So it was kind of a lot more than we needed. So I liked DealMachine, that it just gave you the data you needed for vacant landowners in my case, and then bundled in the skip tracing and the seller age and stuff like that. So that worked great.
Yeah, and transfer and answer is honestly what I'm looking for. Was there a difference in the quality, or was it about the same? Would you say with the phone number accuracy? Like, let's say we just want to make sure you're texting the right person, but we can't do that every time, But I just was curious if you had any data on if it was more or less accurate or about the same.
The short answer is I haven't done A/B testing to see if the skip tracing data is more accurate with DealMachine than direct skip.
Totally fair, yeah.
I don't know.
Yep, and I think you'd notice it more with cold calling than texting,
Probably.
as well, because a lot of texts maybe they just don't reply.
Because we're getting response rates in the low single digits, so it's hard to tell.
Okay, yeah. So what would be the marketing funnel of your text messaging? So you said single digits. So let's say you texted 100 people. I guess that means one person would reply.
No, not one. Single digits would be, kind of 7 to 9%.
Okay.
On a really good list, you might get 13 to 15% response rate.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's in the high single digits, so like 8 or 9% of
Yep.
texts. And that's the initial messages. Then after the initial message, you send follow-up messages generally every 30 or 60 days. Those have lower response rates. They're in lower single digits. But the initial messages usually have, whatever, 9%.
Got it. So how many would you text in a month, say? 1,000, 2,000 property owners?
No, about 8. We send about 8,000 texts a month,
Okay.
about 8 to 10,000 letters a month.
Okay, and that's the initial outreach. And then you're doing follow-ups as well.
Yeah, those
right?
8,000 texts is a mix of
Oh,
initials
it includes
and
the follow-ups as well. So what would like a first message say versus like a follow-up message?
First message will be, hey, we sent you a letter recently. We're interested in buying land in Volusia. Are you free to answer some questions so we can make you an offer?
Okay.
And the follow-up will be like, hey, just circling back. You might remember we reached out a few weeks ago about your land in Volusia. So it's just like a reminder. We'll try our best to make it sound organic. Sometimes we'll add little spelling mistakes into the text messages to make it sound like we're typing it on the go and it's not too robotic.
Yep.
Or pre-planned.
Yeah.
But they're general, just normal reminders. We mix up the templates quite a bit. Sometimes we will use ChatGPT to suggest new text funnels, for 30, 60, 90, 120 days. And we just play around with it and try and see what works and what gives us a good response.
How many leads, true people who really do want to sell, would you get from the 8,000 text messages in a month? So how many leads would you have in a month, would
About
you say?
45.
Okay.
45 to 50.
And
solid leads that we'll do due diligence on and try to qualify.
Got it. And then of those, how many would you end up making an offer on?
We'd probably make an offer on about 30% of them. So let's, about
10? 15?
15, 20 a month, solid offers. And we'll probably, maybe send about 12 contracts. Some of those offers are verbal. Probably about 18 verbal offers, about 12 contracts, and then generally 2 deals a month.
Got it.
I try to keep, honestly, I've gone the opposite direction to most people. I've done high volume and I'm transitioning to low volume.
Yes, more targeted,
more
specific.
targeted, more 6-figure deals, less 5-figure deals. Honestly, my ideal year, David, is to do like 15 deals a year that make me $100,000 each. That's my ideal year. I don't want to do 100 deals that make me $10,000 each. Where you need twice as many staff, twice as much admin, twice as much paperwork and hassle. I want to do smaller numbers of deals with relatively sophisticated sellers and buyers, and it's just less headache and more value for money, and obviously less work.
Yeah.
In general, because I have my work-life balance is important to me. Like I said, I live in Spain, so like freedom of time, freedom of location are just, if not more important to me than freedom of money. I mean, I want to have enough money to fund my lifestyle and have the savings and assets in place for my kids and to have a good life, but just being able to choose my own hours, like I take a lot of vacations, we go a lot of different places, I take a lot of time off, I'm not a workaholic, so I try to be very smart. My mornings are just entirely free to go for workouts and walks and chill out, so I generally work from like 11:30 in the morning to about 7:30 in the evening, Spanish time, which is like 5:30 in the morning to 2:30 in the afternoon, Florida time. And then I have 3 VAs working kind of full-time Florida hours, and I'm just doing my own thing and trying to structure it as much as possible for that kind of high profitability, low volume deals with good funnels.
Yes, that's fantastic. I love that. So what kind of workouts do you do in the morning?
I go to the gym 3 days a week for lifting weights. I get about 12,000 steps done a day, so like I do a lot of walking. And then I'm careful about what I eat. I track my macros and
Yeah.
and try and stay healthy.
Yeah, we're big workout people, and there's nothing better to me than starting my day with a workout.
Yeah.
Knowing that you kind of take care of yourself first, so that way you can work, that way you can, be with your family, spend time. But it's like you have to really, it feels great to me to do the most important thing first, and that feels like the most important thing.
Yeah, and look, the time zone works in my favor because I can drop the kids to school at 8:30, go to the gym at 9 o'clock, which is 3 in the morning in Florida. So nobody's going to be annoying me until 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Spanish time. So I have the whole morning to have a leisurely workout and get a good workout down and go home and have a shake and some fruit and berries and leisurely shower and then just get to work and feeling great and feeling fresh.
Yes. Well, so you've got a lot of experience. You've done 100 flips. You've now honed your business into what feels great, 15 deals a year, big deals. What are you hoping to get from work coming to Collective Genius? It's a big ordeal for you to come over here. You said you have to do 2 connecting flights from Europe to even get here.
Yeah.
So what are you hoping to take away?
I mean, look, I live in a bubble in Spain. Obviously Spain is great. I've got good friends there. It's a good lifestyle, like I said, but I miss being able to hang out with other real estate guys. This is my way of connecting with like-minded people. I mean, I just love hanging out, playing pickleball, playing golf, having lunch, having dinner. So that's I love doing that stuff. I'll just fly over for that a few times a year, but you get a lot of knowledge here. I enjoy giving knowledge to younger folks that are coming up. I learn a lot from them once they get going. I learn a lot from other people that have been here a while. So it's just I get great information about sales, about marketing, about private funding, about getting more efficient with your KPIs, your standard operating procedures, your sales training. You get a ton of value from the presentations that are on stage, and then you make really impactful friendships and relationships in the quiet moments, the coffees, the lunches, where you're just hanging out with people, learning from people. I've done lots of joint ventures with people. I've lent money to people that are doing deals, and I've other people brought deals to me saying, hey, I don't really do this kind of Florida stuff. Maybe you'd like it, and here you go. And so it's been fantastic. It's a no-brainer. I've been doing it for a few years, and I'm going to keep doing these masterminds. They add a lot of value, and it's my way of getting out of the bubble and reconnecting. And I honestly recharge my batteries coming to these things.
Yes. Being in isolation, I can understand that you'd really appreciate coming here. I guess you and, is it Kieran?
Kieran.
You guys are even a bit apart, right? So you can't hang out.
We can't hang out. He's like a 3-hour flight from me and 2-hour drive. And so no, we're not close. It's like you got a buddy in like New York.
Yes.
It's not handy.
One of the things that he said that people really enjoyed was, it's so hard to start a business, but he did it with additional barriers.
Yes.
He had to set his business up from overseas. So maybe you could reiterate again for somebody who missed his episode, what do you have to actually do to set up a business in the United States from Europe?
Yeah, I mean, he's right. On the one hand, if you're living in Boston and you're flipping land in Florida, that's not that much different than living in Ireland and flipping land in Florida. You're not visiting the land. You're just doing everything remotely. But yeah, if you're not a U.S. citizen, if you don't have a credit history, if you don't have a social security number, there's a lot of bureaucracy and there's a lot of hoops to jump through. But I mean, the short answer is you can still set up an LLC, or probably not an LLC, it's going to be a corporation, because you don't want an LLC because there's going to be, tax-wise, it makes no sense. You don't want to flow through entity as an overseas resident because you pay a lot more tax. You're going to have a corporation, closed entity, it's doing its own thing here.
Yeah, it pays corporate tax,
pays
25%?
you dividends, it pays your salary. Yeah, you're paying, here in Florida, for example, I pay 21% federal tax and another 5.5% state tax. When I lived in Florida, I had a much more efficient structure. I had an S-Corp and I paid hardly any tax because there's a lot of great perks for being a real estate business owner in the US, which I lost going back to Spain. But that's the trade-off for having the quality of life.
Wait, what are the perks you lose when you go back to Spain?
I mean, you don't get a lot of the tax benefits. I mean, at an S-Corp, you're just paying tax once on all that money. Now I'm paying it in the corporation and again personally for whatever I take out. You get a lot of deductions, qualified business deductions, 1031 exchanges.
Do you pay the big European tax? You guys have a lot of VAT tax and stuff, right? Is that income tax? No, that's when you buy stuff.
We have a higher income tax in general than the US. Honestly, the first $200,000, there's not a whole lot of difference. Once you're on, if you're paying yourself big bucks, like 400, 500, 600, they're going to take a huge amount of it. They'll take half of it. So I try and avoid doing that. I pay myself what I need to have a comfortable life, and then I leave most of the rest just in the Florida corporation.
Got it. Okay, excellent. And it can grow, you can reinvest it here while it's here.
Yes,
right?
you can reinvest it here to grow your business. And I mean, I had it a bit easier than Kieran because I lived here for a bunch of time. I didn't have it as difficult to open the company, open the bank accounts. I've had social security numbers since I was 19 or 20, coming over on work experience to New York and San Francisco. So I had a long track record of going back and forth, whereas he didn't. So he's a bit more hassle than I did. But again, he's a very determined young man, and he's getting it done. And it's not that big a deal. You can do it, and again, he's doing great.
Well, as we wrap up, if somebody's listening and they have a Florida piece of land, how could they get a hold of you and to potentially JV on that deal or even pass it off to you?
Yeah, reach out to me on Facebook. I think I'm on Colin Investments at Facebook. You can email me at Colin, COLIN, @cgmland.com. That's the main thing. I'm on Facebook and email. I don't really do Insta or Twitter or any of those things. I'm a bit more old school, but
cool.
I'm happy to hang out. I enjoy networking with new investors. I generally have slots on my calendar, 2 or 3 slots a month to just have 15-minute chats from people I want to pick my brain or ask me questions. So
that's a great offer. Somebody take him up on that.
I can give you the link for that, a Calendly link, and I get more out of them than I give, because again, people often come to you with deals or you help someone and a couple of years later they're doing great and flying it and they're looking to JV on a big deal with you. So it's a no-brainer. I enjoy it.
Well, thanks again for your time this morning. And I know this cut into the meeting a little bit, so want to get you back to it. But thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Enjoy talking with you, David.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.